My name is Charlotte Monroe, a former combat nurse, a single mom, and the woman who had the most powerful doctor in America handcuffed on his own private jet. What did you just say? That you created my daughter? That I never had a choice because you arranged everything, from my egg preservation to my deployment to the exact hospital I was assigned to? Well, listen closely, God. The FBI heard every word you just said. This isn't just a failed marriage story. It's a war between truth and deception, between unethical science and a mother's love that refused to break. Before I share the rest of my story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe if you've ever had to stand up alone. For your child, for the truth, or for justice. Trust me, you're going to want to hear what happens next. The boarding pass trembled in my hand as I stood at Gate 27, LAX, Chicago. After 6 years, I was flying straight back into the storm I'd barely survived. My daughter Rosie tugged at my jacket, her small fingers wrapping around mine. "Mommy, why are your hands shaking?" I forced a smile, kneeling to adjust her tiny backpack. Just excited about the plane ride, baby. But excitement wasn't what made my pulse race. It was the weight of what I carried, not in my luggage, but in my memory. The last time I'd flown to Chicago, I was 24, in love, and carrying Nathaniel's child. Now I was 30, a single mother, and carrying something else entirely. Proof. We shuffled onto the plane, finding our seats in row 27, economy, cramped, nothing like the first-class tickets Nathaniel used to book for us. I helped Rosie with her seatbelt, watching her press her nose against the window. She had his eyes, that striking green that could convince you of anything. But she had my stubbornness, my fight. The envelope appeared on my tray table while I was helping Rosie open her juice box. No return address, no postmark, just my name written in block letters. My throat tightened. Nobody knew I was on this flight except my sister. I tore it open, angling it away from Rosie. Inside, a single piece of paper with one typed line. "Don't let the child be examined at any hospital bearing the Creed name." My blood turned to ice. The Creed Medical Group owned 17 hospitals across 3 states. Nathaniel's empire, built on what he called accessible health care for all. The same man who disappeared the day after I'd texted him the ultrasound photo, leaving me with morning sickness, military discharge papers, and a broken heart. The plane lurched forward, engines roaring to life. Rosie grabbed my hand, giggling at the sensation. I held her tight, staring at that piece of paper. Someone knew. Someone knew why I was really going to Chicago, to that medical conference where Dr. Nathaniel Creed would be the keynote speaker, talking about innovations in pediatric care. The irony burned my throat. He'd never even asked if he had a child. 6 years ago, I could suture a wound with my eyes closed. In Kandahar, they called me Steady Hands Monroe. I'd pulled shrapnel from 19-year-old kids who cried for their mothers, held pressure on wounds that wouldn't stop bleeding, and never once let my hand shake. Until I met him. Nathaniel arrived at our field hospital in a helicopter, all perfectly styled hair and designer scrubs under his flak jacket. A volunteer surgeon, he said, taking a sabbatical from his practice to give back. I should have known then. Real humanitarian doctors don't bring 3 suitcases to a war zone. But God, he was magnetic. The way he moved in surgery, confident and precise. How he'd find me during the desert sunsets, bringing contraband wine he'd somehow smuggled in. "Charlotte," he'd say, "you're too beautiful for this place." We had 3 months. 3 months of stolen moments between trauma calls, of making love in my quarters while dust storms raged outside, of him painting pictures of our future, his family's medical dynasty, the hospitals he'd inherit and transform, how I'd never have to work another day if I didn't want to. "But I love being a nurse," I'd told him. "Then you'll run our pediatric wings," he'd said, kissing my forehead. "We'll revolutionize children's health care together." I found out I was pregnant 2 weeks after he'd returned to Chicago. My contract had 3 months left, but complications set in fast. Hyperemesis gravidarum, couldn't keep water down, lost 15 pounds in 2 weeks. The military gave me a medical discharge. I texted him from the tarmac in Kabul, a photo of the ultrasound, a heart emoji, and Coming home to you. He read it. I know because the read receipt showed. Then nothing. His phone disconnected. His email bounced back. Even his hospital said he was on indefinite leave. I landed in Chicago with swollen feet, empty pockets, and nowhere to go. The VA hospital became my refuge. Barely. Medicaid covered the basics, but when Rosie came 6 weeks early, fighting for every breath in the NICU, I learned what basic coverage really meant. 23 days in intensive care. 23 days of watching machines breathe for my baby while newspapers ran puff pieces about Dr. Nathaniel Creed's revolutionary new pediatric centers. He was right there, 15 miles away, cutting ribbons and kissing babies for photo ops while his own daughter fought to survive. I never asked him for anything. Pride, maybe. Or maybe I just knew that a man who could disappear that completely had never really been there at all. The conference hall smelled like expensive coffee and antiseptic dreams. Doctors in $1,000 suits mingled with pharmaceutical reps whose smiles never reached their eyes. I stood in the registration line, Rosie's hand in mine, wearing my only good dress, a black sheath I'd bought at Target for job interviews. Name? Charlotte Monroe. I'm here for the community health seminar. The woman barely looked up, sliding a badge across the counter. Just another face in the crowd. Perfect. Then I heard it, that voice that used to whisper promises in the dark. The future of pediatric medicine lies not in treatment, but in prevention. I turned, and there he was on the massive screen being interviewed for the pre-conference coverage, still devastatingly handsome, still wearing that same confident smile that had once made me believe in fairy tales. Rosie tugged my dress. Mommy, I'm hungry. Soon, baby. But my voice cracked, and she looked up at me with those two smart eyes. Charlotte? Charlotte Monroe? I spun around. Dr. Harper Chen stood there, her face a mix of surprise and something else. Concern? We'd worked together briefly at Chicago General before I'd deployed. Before everything. Harper. I tried to smile. It's been a while. Her eyes dropped to Rosie, taking in the green eyes, the distinctive chin. Her face paled. Jesus, is she... We should talk, I said quickly. Somewhere private. She led us to a quiet corner of the hotel restaurant, ordering Rosie chicken fingers while eyeing me with the kind of look doctors reserve for terminal patients. Charlotte, why are you here? Same as everyone, to learn about innovations in healthcare. She laughed, bitter and short. Don't, not with me. She leaned forward, lowering her voice. You need to know something. Nathaniel, he's under investigation, internal, very quiet. Something about unauthorized drug trials at his charity hospitals. My blood chilled. What kind of trials? Immune system enhancers, experimental stuff. They're testing on kids whose parents can't afford lawyers. She paused, watching Rosie color with crayons. Charlotte, did you ever take her to a Creed hospital? Once, when she was 3. High fever, I was desperate. They took blood samples? Standard tests, they said. Harper pulled out her phone, showed me a document she shouldn't have had. 12 names, all children, all patients at Creed facilities. At the bottom, Rosalie Monroe, sample collected, genetic markers confirmed, classification, alpha variant carrier. My daughter, my baby. While I'd been struggling to pay rent, he'd been collecting her blood like she was a lab rat. What's an alpha variant? My voice sounded hollow, distant. That night, in our cheap motel room, I did something I'd sworn I'd never do again. While Rosie slept, I opened my laptop and typed in commands I'd learned from a tech specialist in Kandahar, a kid who'd taught me how to access enemy communications. Nathaniel's hospital network had decent security, but arrogance makes people sloppy. His password was still the same pretentious Latin phrase he'd used for everything. Primum non nocere. First, do no harm. The irony made me want to vomit. File after file loaded onto my screen. Patient records, trial protocols, correspondence. And then I found it, a folder labeled Genesis Protocol. Inside 12 files, 12 children. Rosie's file was marked with a red star. Subject shows extraordinary resistance to viral infections. Genetic sequencing reveals rare mutation in chromosome 6, position. I couldn't understand the science, but I understood the notes. Highest priority for long-term observation. Potential patent value, $2.3 billion. Patent value. They'd put a price tag on my daughter's blood. The emails were worse. Nathaniel, to his research team. The Monroe child is crucial. Her genetic profile could revolutionize vaccine development. Maintain surveillance, await opportunity for comprehensive sampling. Another, dated last month. Conference will provide ideal circumstances for reacquisition. Reacquisition. Like she was property he'd misplaced. I kept digging. My hands shaking now like they never had in surgery. More files, more children, more violations. Then I found the consent forms. Forged signatures from parents who couldn't read English, backdated documents, falsified medical necessities. But the final blow came in a folder labeled Personal, Confidential. Photos. Dozens of photos of Rosie and me, at the grocery store, the park, her daycare. Timestamps going back 2 years. He'd been watching us. All this time he'd known exactly where we were, what we needed, how we struggled. And he'd done nothing except document his daughter like a science experiment. One photo stopped my heart. Rosie at the hospital during that fever, unconscious, with a nurse drawing what looked like far more blood than any standard test would require. The metadata showed it was taken by Nathaniel's personal phone. He'd been there, in the building. While I'd sat terrified in the waiting room praying my baby would be okay, he'd been in the lab, supervising the theft of her blood. I closed the laptop, ran to the bathroom, and threw up until nothing was left. Then I sat on the cold tile floor and did something I hadn't done since Kandahar. I planned a war. The conference hall was packed. 800 doctors, researchers, and health officials, all watching Nathaniel command the stage. He spoke about equity in healthcare, about protecting vulnerable populations, about the sacred trust between doctor and patient. I sat in row 27, Rosie beside me with her tablet and headphones, waiting. Questions? He asked, scanning the audience with that practiced smile. My hand went up. Yes, you in the back? I stood, my voice carrying clear and strong, the same voice that had called out medical orders over artillery fire. Dr. Creed, you speak about protecting vulnerable children. Does that protection extend to your own daughter? The auditorium went silent. His face. God, I'll never forget how his face changed. The smooth mask cracking just for a second before reforming. I'm sorry, I don't... Her name is Rosalie. I walked toward the aisle, Rosie looking up confused. 5 years old, born 6 weeks premature while you were giving lectures about pediatric care. She has your eyes. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Phones appeared, recording. Ma'am, this is neither the time nor... When is the time, Nathaniel? I was at the front now, looking up at him on his elevated stage. When you were stealing her blood, when you were having us photographed, when you classified her as an alpha variant worth $2 billion? Security, but I was already pulling out the papers, Harper's documentation, the printed emails. I have proof. Unauthorized genetic testing, patent applications on human DNA, forged consent forms. Security reached for me, but Harper's voice rang out from the middle of the crowd. I can confirm this. I have supporting documentation. Dr. Creed has been running illegal trials on children. Then another voice. I have evidence too. And another. The security guards stopped, unsure. The cameras kept rolling. Someone was live streaming. I could see myself on the screen behind Nathaniel, a small woman in a Target dress, holding papers that could destroy an empire. Rosalie, I called to my daughter. Come here, baby. She walked down the aisle, uncertain but trusting. When she reached me, I picked her up, turning so everyone could see her face, those distinctive green eyes, that chin that was all Nathaniel. This is Rosalie Monroe, I said to the cameras. She's not a test subject. She's not a patent. She's a little girl who loves dinosaurs and hates broccoli and still asks why she doesn't have a daddy like other kids. The live stream went viral before the conference ended. Rosalie Monroe, Creed scandal, medical ethics violation. My phone exploded with calls from reporters, lawyers, activists, but I didn't care about any of it. I only cared about the email that came at 3 a.m. No sender name, just a video file. I opened it in the bathroom while Rosie slept. Security footage from a fertility clinic dated 7 years ago. Me, unconscious on an exam table, Nathaniel and another doctor, switching vials. The military subjects are perfect, Nathaniel's voice, clinical and cold. Strong genetics, limited support systems. Monroe's profile is ideal. But the consent! She consented to fertility preservation before deployment. Standard military protocol. We're just optimizing the outcome. They'd switched my eggs. When I'd undergone standard fertility preservation before deploying, something the military recommended to all female soldiers, they'd replaced my harvested eggs with genetically modified embryos. Rosie wasn't his daughter, wasn't even mine, not entirely. She was an experiment from conception. I wanted to scream, to break things, to disappear into the darkness that had nearly swallowed me after Kandahar. But then I heard Rosie whimper in her sleep, caught in some nightmare, and I went to her instead. She curled into me instantly, her small hand finding mine. "Mommy? I'm here, baby." The people were yelling today. I know, I'm sorry. Was that man my daddy, the one on the big screen? How do you answer that? How do you tell a 5-year-old that her entire existence was orchestrated in a lab? That the man who should have loved her saw her only as a patent number? "No, baby," I whispered. "He's just someone Mommy used to know." "Then who's my daddy?" I kissed her forehead, breathing in her little girl smell of crayons and apple juice. "You know what? You don't need one. You've got me, and I love you enough for 100 parents." She seemed to consider this, then nodded, satisfied in the way only children can be. "Okay, love you too, Mommy." The truth was messier, darker, more horrible than I could have imagined. But holding her there, feeling her heartbeat against mine, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. She was mine. Not because of DNA or legal documents, but because I'd held her through every fever, celebrated every milestone, kissed every scraped knee. Biology made her, but love made her mine. Nathaniel's private jet was smaller than I'd expected. He'd texted the invitation himself, the first direct contact in 6 years. "We need to discuss this privately, for Rosalie's sake." Harper had begged me not to go. But she'd also given me something better than advice, a micro camera disguised as a button, live streaming to her hacker friend's secure server. "Charlotte?" He stood when I entered, still playing the gentleman. "Thank you for coming. Where's your security team? This is between us. Please sit." The leather seats probably cost more than my annual rent. I stayed standing. "I'll pay," he said simply. "Whatever you want. 50 million, 100, just sign an NDA and disappear." "She's not for sale." "Everything's for sale." He poured himself whiskey from a crystal decanter. "You think you've won something? The media attention will die. The investigation will find loopholes. I have the best lawyers money can buy. I have the truth." "Ew," he laughed, ugly and sharp. "The truth? You want the truth? Fine. You were perfect. Military background, no family money, desperate for love. The kind of woman who'd disappear quietly when things got complicated." But I didn't disappear. No. He moved closer, and I could smell his cologne, the same one that used to make me weak. "You got stubborn. Started asking questions. Do you know how much that child is worth? Her genetic profile could eliminate half the world's diseases. And you want to keep her playing with toys in some apartment? She's a child, not a cure." "She's both. And legally, she's mine. I funded the research. I own the patents." "You can't patent a human being." "I can patent her genetic modifications, the ones I created, the ones I put inside you." His mask finally slipped completely, revealing the monster underneath. "Is you? Did you really think you had a choice? The fertility preservation, the deployment timing, even your assignment to my field hospital. I arranged it all." My hand found the record button on my phone, back up to Harper's camera. "Say that again." But he was too far gone, drunk on his own arrogance. "I made her, Charlotte. In every way that matters, I'm God in this scenario, and gods don't negotiate with mortals." "No," I said quietly. "But they fall." The FBI agents entered right on cue. Harper had contacted them the moment I'd boarded. Every word he'd said, broadcast live to a warrant judge. His face, as they read him his rights, that was worth every moment of pain. 6 months later, I stood in a real courtroom, not the one I'd imagined during those sleepless nights. Rosie was with my sister, building sandcastles on a beach in Florida, far from cameras and questions. Nathaniel got 25 years. Fraud, human experimentation, conspiracy, and a dozen other charges I couldn't pronounce. His medical license revoked. His hospitals under federal oversight. His empire destroyed. But that wasn't the victory that mattered. The victory was the morning Rosie woke up and didn't ask about the man on TV anymore. It was the fund Harper established, Rosie's Law, providing legal aid to families exploited by medical trials. It was the 11 other families who came forward, their children finally free from surveillance and fear. It was learning to breathe again. We moved to a small town in Oregon where nobody knew our story. I work at a local clinic now, real nursing, the kind where you know your patients' names and their kids' birthdays. Rosie goes to public school, plays soccer badly, and builds elaborate Lego cities in our living room. Last week, another pharmaceutical company reached out. Different approach this time. Transparent, ethical, offering Rosie the choice when she's 18 to participate in research that could help millions. They sent a real doctor, not lawyers. She sat at my kitchen table, drinking coffee from my chipped mug, and talked about informed consent, about Rosie's rights, about the difference between exploitation and contribution. "We can wait 13 years, she said, "and if she says no then, that's the end of it." I told them I'd think about it, but really I was thinking about Rosie's question from that morning. "Mommy, if I'm special, does that mean I have to help people?" "No, baby, it means you get to choose whether to help people." "Like you did? When you were a soldier?" "Something like that." She'd nodded, satisfied, then gone back to her cereal. A normal kid with an extraordinary gift she didn't fully understand yet. And that was okay. She had time to be ordinary, to scrape her knees and fail math tests and have crushes on inappropriate boys. The other day, she asked me to tell her the story of how she was born. I told her the truth, not about laboratories and patents, but about how wanted she was, how I'd loved her from the first flutter in my belly, how she'd fought to breathe and won, how she'd made me brave enough to fight too. "We're warriors," she declared, raising her juice box in a toast. "The strongest," I agreed. "We are, both of us. Survivors of a war we didn't choose, veterans of battles nobody should fight. But here, in our small life with its small joys, we're winning. Every single day, we're winning.